Excellent.
In the year 1979, everyone wanted a piece of that Star Wars money.
When was this movie released exactly? Like month? Did you get that by chance? Probably not.
No.
It would have been the summer of 79.
Oh, okay.
Exactly 2 years after the preceding film.
Because I was born in 79.
Big summer movie.
I wanted to know if I was a Moonraker. That's my zodiacal.
I will tell you exactly. With my extensive pre-film research, it was, of course, released upon the 26th of June.
Oh, okay.
1979 in the United Kingdom. So it might have been a couple of months either way in the US. But
I'll take any release date we have. So can I make that my my astrological sign then?
The Moonraker?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. I mean, the opening song sings as though Moonraker is the thing I'm supposed to know what it is. So
well, I can tell you what the title means.
Go on.
It's probably an urban myth that during ye olde smuggling days, sort of redcoats and Jamaica Inn style times, when the revenue men would come across boats but were smuggling, they would have their fishing nets out and pretend to be idiots and go, "Oh, we're trying to catch moonlight. We're raking the moon, you see, governor. We ain't doing no smuggling here."
Oh yeah,
that's where the expression is supposed to come from.
That's close enough to Pisces, I think. I'll take that. Okay. The film is Moonraker. I am Matt.
I am Luke.
It's a sci-fi sanctuary. We have a guest. Oh, you can say your name. I was just saying we have a sci-fi sanctuary.
I was going to say, and if it's a 69, you were expecting me.
Yeah.
He's a filthy man, that James Bond. And I'm Stuart, and I'm not filthy. I'm going to be a credible, integral film critic with no innuendo at all that will come up in this conversation.
I'll tell you what will come up in this conversation. Innuendo.
Innuendo. Oh, okay. I had to work that out as a joke. I thought you were making a point. Okay, cool.
No, the up was just my boner.
Right. Okay. No innuendo. Just we're gonna say everything directly.
But that's pretty much the level of innuendo this film is at, though. It's not so much. It's just, I am Dr. Goodhead. That's barely an innuendo.
I know, I actively watch her write notes, and I was like, well, there's not even a point in really referencing that, is there? It's not like it's insightful or witty or anything to notice that, there's bad puns and things like that.
Well, I suppose the thing to note with her name is that it's mildly surprising that James Bond, who is used to meeting women with names like that, would have even assumed she was a man in the first place. You just go, Dr. Goodhead, that's going to be another woman who I was sleeping with later on.
Yeah, I at no point was shocked that it was not a man who was this doctor. Like, did they expect the audience to think it would be a man? Did they think the audience had never seen a Bond?
Well, maybe it's a new kind of Bond where Bond has new kinds of relationships.
I would say a male Dr. Goodhead, that would have been an entirely different film. A groundbreaking film in many ways.
Even now, they only make jokes about that. You never see it.
Though Kiwi's gay now.
True. Again, in a very easily edit it out for China way.
Yeah. He's as much gay as the previous Q was heterosexual, though, so at least it's an even balance.
So as far as where this film came on your radar, it's really hard to figure out where you came across a Bond film, especially one of this vintage. We had Channel 17, TBS Superstation in Atlanta, and they just spend the entire weekends playing Bond films and Beastmaster. So, I don't know when I saw this. I probably saw half of it here, another 10 minutes of it there, and eventually pieced the whole thing together. Weirdly, this is not one of the ones I really remember well. You think it would be, but it's not. Live and Let Die. That one I definitely saw a lot of. So,
I mean, if I'd known it was a Beastmaster that was receiving Bond films, I would have said we should have done A View to a Kill, which has old Tanya Roberts from Beastmaster in it.
Oh, it all ties together there. That's cool.
Yeah, it would have been symmetry. We could have done a double bill podcast.
But I guess I probably did somewhat avoid this one because it was so poorly reviewed. And as a kid, I was like, oh, bad reviews. Maybe I shouldn't watch this one. Not understanding that in its own special way, it's the best Bond film.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing to mention, actually. This is a film that has had a huge renaissance in sort of the last 20 years. When I first got to Bond fandom during the Brosnan era, it was the worst one. It was the one people were mocking of. It was the one even the filmmakers sort of went completely different direction from the next one. They felt embarrassed by what they'd done, even though it had been a very successful film. It's a very popular film when it was released. And it had gone down well with the kids and all that. They all loved it. But there was such a stinking embarrassment about James Bond in space. But it really took up until those kids grew up and started to be able to shout louder over the older fans from the 70s, who had mostly died of old age by that point. And they took over. And especially after Die Another Day took over the crown of the official worst Bond film, it's really sort of, it's gone up in its reputation, especially with its model work, and cinematography, and Drax. People love Drax now. He's a very timely villain of a billionaire who wants to conquer space.
Is this
he's basically Elon Musk. It's great.
Yeah.
He predicted Elon Musk.
Was this the Bond film actually helped by Austin Powers? Because we have one of those films where he goes to space, right? And I feel like that's the 20-year mark you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that was the same year as Die Another Day. So maybe that was like the exact point. The intersection happened. But yes, there's a moon base in Spy Who Shagged Me. If I can say shagged.
Oh, you can say cunt if you want. We don't care.
But not shagged.
But yes, it's Bond in space, which is why we're on. It's officially, well, in fact, no, officially it's not science fiction. So I'm not sure if you can qualify it for your podcast.
Oh,
there's
okay,
a very famous interview that's on the Blu-ray and the DVD with producer Cubby Broccoli, where he says, "This is not science fiction; it's science fact."
See, I told you that those Air Force jet or spacecraft had people in them, the one that stay up for like years at a time.
Yeah, people with ray guns.
This movie's the proof of that. So,
yeah, sure.
Where was your first raking of the moon?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I just would have seen it on TV growing up.
Okay. Do we all have the same answer in this case?
I mean, yeah, none of us are old enough to have seen it on opening night.
I am.
Technically, I guess. Are you allowed to take infants that young into the theater?
My parents.
People did it all the time in the 70s. Just leave them there.
Use them as the ashtray, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I did actually see a Bond movie with Roger Moore, but unfortunately it wasn't this one, so I can't make that my interesting story about. It was an event he was at, but it wasn't like we coincidentally turned up and we were both watching it. But I saw For Your Eyes Only with Roger Moore at Pinewood, so that was
that's pretty cool.
Very exciting. I'm assuming he sat and watched the entire movie, and he didn't just turn up to come out and bow at the end. I'm choosing to believe that.
Yeah, Roger Moore seemed a lot cooler than Roger Moore's Bond in the end, which is maybe that's weird. I guess. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But is it story hour? Is this the part where you do a story for us?
Yeah, I can run us through the plot.
Radio.
Matt asked me to do this in my Connery voice, but that seems inappropriate for a Roger Moore Bond.
That's why I thought it would be extra funny.
All right, fine.
Yeah, do it in your good head voice.
The space shuttle Moonraker is stolen en route to the UK, so not so secret agent James Bond 007 is sent to investigate. He starts by visiting the shuttle's creator, Hugo Drax, who immediately reveals himself as a villain. Bond meets Colleen Defoe and Holly Drax, gets his end away with the former and flirts with the latter. Bond attempts to find proof of Drax's crimes, leads him to Venice and then Rio, where he and Goodhead, a CIA agent, board a shuttle and fly up to Drax's space station. Drax is planning to kill everyone on Earth and then repopulate with hand-picked Ubermensch. With a little help from Holly, foe-turned-friend George, and a ship full of astronauts, Bond kills Drax, saves the day, and docks his own rocket.
I like that your Connery accent made it sound as if he was helped by a guy called George.
Well,
which could be George's name. We don't know his real name.
I was shocked looking this film up after the fact. I thought Jaws was in more than just 2 films.
They nearly had him back for the next one as well, but they were like, "No, we must be serious now."
Well, that's the other surprise is that I was like, "Wow, this is so camp and ridiculous," and Roger Moore looks so old. This must be one of his last films. No, it was his 4th.
Well, I guess, with the actors, you don't have to talk that much about actors in the Bond film, but they Roger Moore was too old when they cast him, just in the first one. It was maybe he was age appropriate and just Live and Let Die, and that's pretty much it.
I mean, he looks great in Live and Let Die, though. I will say he's lean and mean, and he's always looked younger than Sean Connery did.
I think Sean Connery was
contemporarily. I mean, sort of Sean Connery at the same time always looked much older, despite being younger.
I think Connery was just born looking old, though.
Yeah, I mean, he was 32 in Doctor No, and he looks like he's about 45. So he lived a life, Sean Connery. But
I was born old.
Yes, this was the last sort of automatic one for Roger. He had his 3-film contract, and then he signed up for this extra one pretty much on the spot. But after this, they were always going to replace him, and then something happened that made them agree to his salary demand to come back. For the next one, it's because they weren't really sure what they were going to do for a new Bond, so we ended up staying for one after that. It was because Sean Connery was coming back for Never Say Never Again. So they sort of we can't have a new Bond go up against Sean Connery, and for his last one, it was, we cannot have Timothy Dalton fuck Grace Jones. Only Roger Moore can do that.
I think they should just let him keep doing them for 20 more years after that, because when Roger Moore only died recently, right? He could have been doing
recently. I mean, again, I suppose Sean Connery did his last action film the same year Die Another Day came out. So I suppose either one of them could have kept going up until Daniel Craig, at least.
So that's like a nexus of time and space, just like good old 1955, I guess.
Okay, so this was his exact middle film. He did 3 before and 3 after.
That's amazing. Okay.
Because 7 doesn't again, like with Jaws, 7 doesn't feel like enough. I feel like when I was a kid, there was a different Roger Moore Bond movie on every weekend for my entire childhood.
Like there were 63 of them or something?
Yeah. It was like there was 7.
I think the thing... Oh, sorry.
I said they're all pretty long movies, so...
I mean, the thing with the Moore era is that it took a while to get going with the public. I mean, the second one with Man with the Golden Gun was the least successful Bond film up until License to Kill came out. I mean, it's still like second from bottom. So like the film before this, where they'd also had all sorts of legal problems, they really went all out because it could have been the last Bond film inspired of me. So like Man with the Golden Gun had been a failure. The team making the films had split up and were suing each other. So it was like the guy who was now making them solo and had split off his partner. He put everything into making Spy Love Me a big, big film. Kind of like George Lucas with The Empire Strikes Back, where he put all of his money into it, and if it had failed, it would have ruined him. And it succeeded. It was incredibly successful. So this is sort of like the victory lap for The Spy Who Loved Me, this one. It's virtually the same film, but in space instead of underwater.
The space does it for me. Well, I have a sci-fi sanctuary, don't I? So that's self-explanatory, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a man building his undersea his kingdom to survive nuclear apocalypse underwater. That's not science fiction, but if he does it in space, then it's science fact.
We were willing to call the last Bond film science fiction because we did the episode
Well,
on
it's
that.
got nanomachines in it, which I'm sure were in the script from the start.
Of Moonraker.
And I think 90% of Bond films, once you get the gadgets and stuff, you can get away with calling them a sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, they're
I'm
but
here on
certainly creeps into it most of the time. But of course, this one especially because of Star Wars. The previous film had promised the next movie was going to be For Your Eyes Only. And they realised after Star Wars they wanted some of that sweet money, so they went for the one title they hadn't used. It sounded like science fiction. So they did write this plot under the title For Your Eyes Only originally. And in that original script, where it's still called For Your Eyes Only, the shuttles are called Enterprise class shuttles, which is quite a nice double sci-fi touch, I think. But of course, when they used the book title, they went for Moonraker instead.
Yeah, I think this is the movie that has the least to do with the book, is it? No, I guess that'd be like Quantum of Solace, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Quantum of Solace is the only film, to use the Fleming title, that has nothing from the story in it. It doesn't have a location or a character name. At least this has, one character name, I think, is Hugo Drax. He's the only one from the book. And the rockets plot.
You mean to tell me the book didn't have Holly Goodhead?
No, Gala Brand was even. But the book's really interesting, actually, because it is the only Bond book set entirely in the UK. It's the only one where he doesn't fuck anybody. In fact, he goes to fuck her at the end. And she goes, actually, have you met my fiance? And he gets dumped by the girl right at the end. And it's about Nazis who have infiltrated the heights of British society.
Well, this one's about the space program,
so
it's basically about Nazis.
Yeah, it's infiltrated British upper echelons, and are using British money and a knighthood from the Queen to build a super nuclear missile, which they're going to drop on London as revenge for the war. And the book ends with Bond dropping the bomb instead on a submarine full of Nazis. So never say these things were never political. It's a definite stance there. But officially, it's not always have to do with the book because they felt that blowing up London wasn't a big enough threat.
I'm looking up the list of Miss Dr. Goodhead's film career. Lois Chiles in lots of stuff. Haven't seen it. Oh, she was in Speed 2, Cruise Control. That's exciting.
She's actually in the original Austin Powers as well, but only in the international cut. She's cut out of the American release. But if you watch the international version, there's a bit every time a henchman gets killed, it cuts to their family, finding out that they have been killed. So like Rob Lowe is in one of those bits, and she's in one as well, getting a call that a henchman husband has died.
Yeah, I remember seeing
news.
It might have been like an extra on the DVD or something. I do remember seeing that and finding it rather excessive.
And in terms of films out now, she is in the Gal Gadot role in the original Death of a Nile.
That's there, and she seems quite retired at this point, but I guess you can do that when you have reached your certain age. We already mentioned Richard Kielba's Jaws. I'm just trying to do the wrapping of the actors. Oh, Hugo Drax, of course. We got to talk about Mr. Drax, played by somebody. When my computer's
Drax is a weird one because I could kind of see what they're going for with his villain plot is fine, and the fact that he's constantly like trying to do Bondish things but not being as good as Bond. So he's like, oh, look at these lovely ladies, but they're clearly not interested. And he's like, oh, I'm going to go and do shooting, but he's not as good as Bond. It's kind of amusing. But like, what a damn squib of a villain. Just this little Ricky Gervais guy.
I really like Drax. But I think the thing to note with Michael Lonsdale is that both he and just about everybody else in this film being French is because this is not an English movie. It's a French movie. As you can tell by the incredibly subtle way they introduced the French chateau at one point in the middle of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Taxes were too high because of Margaret Thatcher. Just about everybody major involved in this film was a tax exile from the UK at this point, so they couldn't film it here. So they took over Paris instead.
Thatcher, the James Bond snatcher.
Yeah. Same thing happened with License to Kill, but they went to Mexico in that case.
Drax, he gets quite a bit of mileage on his name. I mean, that's pretty much the best Bond villain name, if nothing else. It's Hugo Drax. I mean, that sounds like a guy who has a eugenic space station or whatever.
But like, he's a huge fucking idiot, because it literally, like I said in my plot synopsis, Bond shows up and Drax basically just acts villainous and tries to have him killed immediately.
Well, he gets down to business.
But like, I think at that point there was no one suspected him of anything. And if he just styled it out, he'd have been fine.
That's because he's playing like 8th dimensional chess, man.
But I think maybe, I mean, this is getting ahead of ourselves. This film starts, and from the opening scene is clearly a comedy. So I just watched the whole film in that mindset, and it's great. But yeah, I wonder if the reason it had this reputation is because people did not expect it to be such a comedy when they went into it.
Maybe.
It starts with Jaws, who like just shows up. Is not like Bond's just finished an action scene, and then Jaws is here, haha. Yeah, and then he falls into a fucking circus.
Is Jaws even working for anyone in this movie?
And later he's working for Drax, but at the start he feels like killing James Bond.
Well, he's a henchman for hire. So yeah. after his first mission fails, and after Drax's original sidekick gets killed, he just phones up a henchman for hire number and he goes, "Can I have a new henchman, please?" And I think that's also easy to wonder about himself. Where did the henchman come from, or what are they getting out of it? And it turns out you bet just a number you call. And actually, if you go to the henchman, you know he's going to kill everybody. The henchman will go, "That's actually a bit shit. Okay, I'm not doing this."
Does he even get paid? Because he does it clearly as a hobby as well. So probably do it for free.
Yeah, he didn't listen to the Joker. If you're good at something, never do it for free.
So that's where we are with him. But yeah.
But he's not very good at it though, because he also fails to kill Bond every time. Even with the fact Bond keeps punching him in the teeth. You'd think he'd learn after the first time.
Well, this film reminds me so much of Adam West Batman, even in the fact that Drax repeatedly has Bond in his clutches and always puts him in some dumb death trap instead of just shooting him in the head. He does it like 4 times in this film, even after saying like, "Well, I've failed to kill you in a fun way, so I'm just going to kill you by trapping you under my rocket."
That's cool. I mean,
it's great. Again, if you accept the tone of this film,
he's got passion for his villainry. You do it the right way. There's probably like, in the Geneva Convention or something, you have to do it that way.
Pretty sure in the Geneva Convention you're explicitly not supposed to do it that way.
Well, there's no Geneva in space.
There we go. Well, the first couple attempts are on land though, so yeah, because supervillains need to adhere to international law, as we know. Okay.
I like the idea that he's like he's got all these Nazi ideals and about perfect humanity. He's this short, dumpy little fat man who doesn't remotely live up. He would not match the standards of his community if he was put to them. So I think there's a good hypocrisy there in his self-delusion about perfect people.
Yeah, that's pretty much like a good old Nazi standby.
All he really wants to do is live on space in a space station surrounded by beautiful women and without any annoying people around. Who wouldn't want that?
I mean, he's kind of got a cause. I mean, it's like the Manson family in space, basically, right?
Yeah.
It also did one of the flaws of a previous film, which said it basically exactly the same film, is that the Stromberg in that wants to go live underwater. And nobody is stopping him going to live underwater. He can go live. He doesn't need to blow up the world on the surface. He can just go live underwater. So at least here, there's a reason for him to wipe out all of humanity. He doesn't want to live on a space station his entire life. He wants to go back down and repopulate the Earth. So we obviously listened to some criticism of the previous film. I thought, let's make this villain's plan a little bit more solid, a little bit more realistic and nuanced, and not
failed. They failed miserably. We added this touch of logic, so we got that going for us at least.
Well, I do like that they bother to explain near the end why he stole the Moonraker at the start. Because I think most
one of his was broken, was it?
Yeah, it's like, well, it had broken, we needed a new one quickly, so we just took it back. That's a reasonable explanation for what starts off a plot. And they could have just not bothered with that 2 hours in, but I think most people would have just again, what was that game on that double taking pigeon?
The opening of this film was basically ripped off wholesale for Superman Returns, right? Shuttle launches while it's still attached to the 747.
Oh yeah, of course that's from the Superman comics, I think, when they relaunched them a few years later. That's how Superman makes his first appearance.
I know it's always he's some sort of airplane catch, is
yeah, it's so I think that comic could have easily ripped off this film though.
Yeah,
same
but yeah,
thing.
just that image of the shuttle on top of the 747 taking off. I mean, maybe shuttles were transported that way. I don't know.
Oh, they were. Yeah, in fact, that's all shuttles had done at the point this film had come out.
None of them had actually gone up yet. Oh, cool.
No, they built the Enterprise and had done. They took it up on a 747 and let it glide down to show they could do that. But none of them had been into space yet. They were supposed to have, but they turned out to be less good at getting shuttles into space than these filmmakers were. So it didn't actually happen until about a year after the film's release. Which annoyed the filmmakers because they were like, we wanted a publicity for the shuttle launch and it never happened.
I now can't remember when we see the shuttle launch in this film. Is it attached to a separate rocket or does it just launch itself?
It's got the 3 stages of the real one.
Anyway. Okay, cool.
Yeah, which are salt shakers on a string with salt coming out the bottom as they're flying up. That's how they did that effect.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure the real one worked that way as well, but yeah.
That's why they kept exploding. It was very sad. We never realised the effect of salt corrosion.
The space station itself, of course, is fun now that there is a kind of proper space station up there, because this one again has way too much open space. Makes it easier to get the cameras in. That's for sure. It'd be hard to film a movie on the International Space Station.
Once we got up to space, I was amazed how good it looks.
Oh yeah, I've got Ken Adam, brilliant production designer. So interesting, before this, he had done designs for the Star Trek movie that never happened in the mid-70s, from which the Discovery, the new TV show, is based on the Enterprise from that film.
Okay,
So he'd already done lots of spaceship and space station designs for that unmade movie. So I think he had sort of a bit of a head start on the production.
Yeah, I got a friend who loves the first half of this movie, and I'm like, for me, it's like, no, it's the second half that really lights on fire because of its insanity. Once we get into its new age, call it underground domicile, that's pretty hip. That's where the movie really starts for me. Giving, of course, there's the circus and the gondola. I mean, there's so many things. They put too many things in this movie. That's part of its charm.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it start to finish, but as just a really silly romp.
It doesn't have a serious bonus body. Apart from a couple of moments where it goes incredibly dark, like when she gets ripped apart by the dogs, and that's played entirely straight as just a nasty moment. Or when Jaws is wearing a clown costume and is walking towards that other woman very slowly. That's really creepy as well. It's like they're making a very silly comedy film. Every half hour again, let's do a horror film for 5 minutes. Let's scare the shit out of kids.
We all know that the first Bond girl in any Bond movie is going to meet a horrible end.
Yeah.
I guess that's
enough about Roger's penis.
There's not even the slightest tick out of the formula box for this movie, which for when there's 25 Bond movies, that makes it kind of fun. Well, he goes to space. I guess that's the only tick that's different than the standard Bond.
As well as being a remake of a previous film, that film was a remake of You Only Live Twice, which also had some space stuff at the end, but Bond didn't quite get into space in that one. So this is literally the third time they made this film in 11 movies. And we did it at least once more after this, which Tomorrow Never Dies.
At least it's not Thunderball again, right?
They can't remake Thunderball. They are not allowed to again. Only Kevin McClory can do that.
Right. So in this movie, Bond is a company man, because Luke, you're complaining every Craig movie is Bond against the system. How do you feel about company man Bond?
Even in this one, towards the end, he has to go a little bit off book because is he the Home Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, whoever?
Oh, Minister of Defence.
Minister of Defence. There you go. Minister of Defence. He's friends with Drax and doesn't believe Bond, so M has to pretend Bond's on like sabbatical and send him off to do a mission.
Yeah,
so he's still going a little bit off books, but yeah. It's not quite Craig, where literally every single film he's breaking orders and it's treated like it's the first time he's done it.
And he's running a side hustle of his SpaceX OnlyFans, of course.
But the amazing thing about Freddie Gray is Minister of Defence, who is one of those Bond regulars nobody remembers, even though he's in 5 of the films in a row, is he was even one before this under a Labour government. And in this one, it's our Conservative Thatcher government, and he's still Minister of Defence. He is defected from Labour to the Tories and kept his job. It's the most high-stakes political defection in British political history, and nobody mentions it in the films.
Well, no, you see, in the universe of this film, Bond didn't allow Thatcher to become Prime Minister. So...
but Thatcher is in the next film.
Okay.
Yeah, but she tries to flirt with Bond at the end, and he decides to offer shag a woman instead.
He was able to delay the inevitability of Thatcher
by a year.
That might be the most heroic thing Bond's ever done.
It's where I feel bad for this film. This film says the entirety of humanity for Prime Ministers are phony. The next film, he saves one decoding device. That's where Thatcher decides to phone him up and go, "Oh, I say, Mr. Bond, you're so wonderful." But I'd say this film is where he does a bigger job. Getting your priorities right, Thatcher.
I mean, they start to phone him and he's balls deep. So,
well, it's the Queen who's watching him in this one. She respects what Bond does. She sees James Bond having sex. That's kept her going for another 40 years.
I bet she bloody enjoyed it. Dirty bitch.
So the plan is fun. Like, we're going to go to space, and how are they going to kill everyone on Earth?
They're shooting down nerve gas.
Oh, right.
With the Death Star, I think.
Yeah, the gassy Death Star, right? Gaseous Death Star.
There's something that requires you to do that sort of down the trench run, firing your lasers at the impossible targets. Something like anything like that is what you're allowed to do in a space film.
Closer to no, I've forgotten. Oh, Captain America. Captain America, it's all different, shooting them all over the world.
I think the most gratuitous bit is when the targeting system breaks down and he has to use a force link to shoot the last one manually. That's just where George Lucas should have just had a credit.
Bond, use the force. Oh, I never use force. It's always consensual.
In fact, considering George Lucas was suing other Star Wars knockoffs around this point, I'm surprised he didn't sue Bond people as well. Maybe thought that they were being sued by too many people with all the Bond lawsuits.
I think it's loose enough because it's more actual real world NASA in space
science
than
facts,
Star Wars in space. Yeah.
And he would have had plenty of other people to sue if that was his game.
I mean, on the list with like Battlestar and Buck Rogers and stuff, this was nowhere near the top.
Battlestar was the one he did see, and then they
Yeah.
sued him back over Flash Gordon, I think, and then they double sued, triple sued, quadruple sued. So maybe he was a bit sick of all the suing at this point as well.
Or maybe it was like, do you know the thing about John Carpenter and Hideo Kojima?
No, do tell.
Well, basically, Solid Snake is a straight up ripoff of Snake Plissken. But John Carpenter's met Hideo Kojima and it's just like, no, he's a nice guy, so I'm not going to sue him. so maybe George Lucas just like, nah, Bond's all right. I'm not going to sue Bond.
You should, yeah.
So I don't think John Carpenter owns the Snake Plissken right. So he would have been able to anyway.
Possibly not. But yeah, there's another quote where it's like, how do you feel about these remakes of your films? And he's like, well, the ones that I get paid for are good, and the ones that I don't are bad.
Hey, you got to have a good metric to, run this stuff by.
John Carpenter's banter. I like John Carpenter.
Speaking of more famous directors, this would have been one Steven Spielberg would have done if they'd have let him. Because they wouldn't, he went off and did create Indiana Jones instead.
Yeah, it's always interesting how a bunch of people are like, I want to make it. Like Nolan obviously wants to make a Bond film. He's never going to, because there's some weird recipe needed for the Bond film in the end. Like it's kind of like Marvel movies, right? You can't really have a real director like do that. We'll see how Raimi pans out later this year, which he probably won't. So
I think that's changing a little bit because like Taika Waititi got to do his own shit. And again, it's literally just him.
Yeah,
James Gunn until they found like a 10-year-old tweet.
They did nearly have some quite famous directors work on it around. So John Landis worked on the previous film on the scripts and was down as a potential director. Which, considering there were helicopters in every Bond film, it's quite lucky he didn't get that gig.
Yep. Yeah, I only found out about that a couple months ago when me and Matt did the Twilight Zone movie, and he got to tell me live on the podcast about all that shit.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, probably Matt Landis was only the second worst thing he ever did. Or was it Max Landis?
I think it's Max.
I don't care enough to respect him calling my proper name.
Max Landis actually is a Bond villain name right there.
Yeah. I woke up this morning checking to see if Dan Aykroyd had died. He's still alive.
Did you dream that he died?
Yeah, someone mentioned him yesterday on a different podcast, and then I think I dreamed that fact in my sleep, and I was like, wait. And I think it's because Ivan Reitman did die a few weeks ago, so I was like, crossing all the wires. So I had to check.
You're worried that there might be a curse of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, good. I came up because he apparently Dan Aykroyd was on a podcast just shilling his vodka several times.
Is it a curse if they all just die when they're very elderly men?
I know that's why it's such a tragedy.
It's the same curse that we all have. It's called mortality.
It's like when the Queen dies, she's really, really old and people are still gonna flip out, right?
Oh God.
I know you're not, but people are.
I mean, I'll have a party.
The way things are going, we'll all probably be dying at the same time as us. We won't have time to worry.
Yeah. So,
but more cheerfully on the silly, wacky adventures about funny guy James Bond. This is definitely like the going for real family popularism. Like Jaws, everything that happened to him in this film was a result of what kids wrote in about after the previous films. Like, can Jaws be nice? Can Jaws get a girlfriend? All that is from all the letters they got from small children. And they're like, yep, he can be nice and he can have a girlfriend.
I love, and I know it's pure cheese. I love the, talking the villain around to being a good guy at the end, stuff like that. I mean, especially when he's just a big dumb brute. So I thought that was great. I don't even have an issue with that. I thought it was brilliant.
He's a purely wily coyote character in this film, Jaws. Yeah. It's like him and Bond is his roadrunner.
Well,
and then they team up against Acme at the end. It's beautiful.
That's exact. I was watching it thinking like, wait, when did Jaws and Bond just become Tom and Jerry? When did he become just this villain who shows up every couple of scenes to get a comical comeuppance and not apply to the plot in any way? And it's so weird that that's just in this one film. Because the way he shows up was like that was this long-running gag in this series of family films. But it's like, no, remember when this was a serious spy thriller? But now it's this.
I mean,
that was one complaint about this film at the time it came out. Was you said if you got James Bond, who is this unkillable fantasy character, up until recently anyway, and then having Jaws, who is also an unkillable fantasy character, pushes it. You can't have two of them in the same film, and it gets a bit too much. But that's not bothered me. I quite like all the silliness from Jaws.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anything, it does make sense to have two because you've got like Bond and the anti-Bond. Quite a few of them have tried to do that. Obviously, you got like 006 in GoldenEye.
Spoilers.
Various Bonds, I think, have tried to have like he's like a Bond, but he's bad. And I think Jaws is at least more interesting than that.
Yeah, I'm saying you're thinking though, if you took Moonraker out of Roger Moore's Bond run, then his Bond run just commits the sin of being relatively boring.
Well,
maybe there's some Sunday afternoon slipping into that assessment as well, you know.
You mentioned Bond being this like unkillable fantasy character, and like in the same way that this film was like a desperate attempt to be Star Wars, I think a lot of the Craig stuff has tried to make it a superhero film. Like he's way more over the top now. Most of the action is CGI nonsense. Like there's always been an attempt to make Bond whatever the popular thing is. I don't think this film is like unique in that.
I mean, Casino Royale was basically Bond Begins. You're talking about Nolan, very indebted to Nolan. And the last one definitely had a lot of MCU stuff in it. To the point, I'm not sure if the villain's plot was obviously cut down because of COVID or cut down because it was too much like Thanos. But,
True.
or both. But there was definitely some editing went on there during the 2 years it was sat on the shelf about the explanation of what he was doing at the end.
Yeah.
But that's another film. I suppose the first one to do that was really Live and Let Die. This is a blaxploitation film. Starring the single whitest man who's ever lived. Which makes a funny juxtaposition. I love Live and Let Die. He does get complaints of racism, but I think I'm not going to tell any black people who find it racist not to, but I think it's quite a funny satire putting him into that scenario where the black characters are all treated with respect, whether they're villains or not. Then after that, it's a kung fu movie, which is more racist by a considerable margin. Spy Love Me is a bit of a weird one because it's not quite anything contemporary, really, because Star Wars hadn't happened yet. So it was that same summer. So it's lucky in that regard, but it's a lot more sci-fi and out there. This is a Star Wars one. The next one's the anti-Star Wars one. Then it's an Indiana Jones one. And then it's whatever the hell A View to a Kill is, which is one of those things many people have wondered over the years.
That one's the walking one.
That's a walking one, all right.
So I guess they just tried so hard in this one, you know. It's like watching a kid try really hard and then fail miserably.
Well, it's the constant cycle of Bond, I think, is just this one's really wacky like it was when you were a kid. This one's really grounded. It's not like the wacky one. This one's really wacky like when you were a kid. No, this one's really grounded. It's not like the wacky one. And it's just that back and forth forever.
Except for Daniel Craig, where it's this time Bond's against the system.
Yeah. Well, no, the problem now is that every Bond film has the plot. Does the world still need Bond? And like when you've made that plot 6 times in a row, I guess the answer is no.
The world needed Bond and
Moonraker. Definitely no, the last one. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting stuff you could say about that title sequence alone, where the statues of Britannia are falling over, like the Lenin statues do with the GoldenEye title sequence. Where you go, yeah, this is saying the same thing it was saying about communism 15 years earlier about the UK. But again, that's another podcast. This is a film where Britain is great, and you have space shuttles, and
Hover gondolas and boats that launch hang gliders.
just in case you go towards a waterfall.
I also love that the hang glider scene, which is pretty tame, is full of horrendous green screen. Whereas the
there's a
skydiving,
lot of it in this film.
whereas the
Yeah.
skydiving scene, which is like actually insane, is mostly real in camera stuff.
Well, you put your budget where you have to.
Yeah.
They did try and film a boat scene for real going over that waterfall. Obviously, there weren't any actors in it, just some dummies. But the boat got stuck up top of the waterfall. Go over it, like hit a rock. So you have to do it all with model work.
The model work looks good. I'm just thinking of the like Roger Moore's close-ups. Look terrible.
So they're like, screw this, we'll just go play in our tub.
Yeah. Like, could they not have just put him in front of a blue sky and shot it from below and it would have looked 10 times better?
The opening skydiving scene is brilliant. I think Iron Man 3 has a similar sequence. They went to get some of the same sub people who worked on this Bond film to do it. So they basically, hey, we're going to do that. We'll get the same guys.
Point Break is another classic, jumping out without a parachute scene.
It's a whole genre.
I guess we're never going to do a Point Break podcast, so I'll bring it up here. The whole thing in the Point Break one is he says like, I'll shoot you if you don't pull the chute. He's like, you won't shoot me. And eventually Keanu throws the gun away. Should have shot him in the leg and then pulled the chute.
That's not what a real man does.
But I think this film would have been the first film to do that, because I understand it. The cameramen aware of it, the shooting scene, had to be specially invented for this film.
I can imagine.
A normal 35mm camera, it would break your neck when you pull the parachute.
Right,
So it had its own little parachute that came out first. And they spent a lot of time inventing and developing that before they could go film any of it. Maybe they broke a few necks along the way as they were testing it. I don't know about that.
But yeah, that whole sequence.
I would not have volunteered.
That sequence is amazing. It's really good. And I can't imagine what it would have been like watching it in a theater in 1979. And then it ends with a terrible shot of Jaws falling into a circus.
So, it's interesting, but because this film is so different from the book, it got its own novelization. And in the novelization, Jaws doesn't show up until Drax calls him. So he's not in the pre-credits, and he basically doesn't appear till right near the end. He doesn't go over the waterfall either, so it's like he's only in the main Jaws sequences.
We have the parachute bit, the boat bit, the cable cars bit, and then the space station. So there's 4 different Jaws sequences.
Oh, and his girlfriend isn't in the novel either. I think she's at quite a late stage.
So I guess we cut out the first 3 of those in the book then.
But it's easy because the novelization is written in a style of Ian Fleming, a sort of a pastiche. Because the guy wrote the screenplay, so was having some fun. So it's like a really serious, gritty version of this film, with like more bloody violence and swearing and sex. So if you want it, they got Moonraker done very seriously. I would recommend people who track down the book.
Okay.
You know what I would have changed? I would have had
Drax looks like James Mason in the book as well, who was a guy they would have got to play him if they had to use a French actor.
They're wishful thinking. I would have had Bond vomit in his own face during the tilt-a-whirl scene. There's a better name for that.
I'm not ready for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. They did a novelization of A Spy Who Loved Me as well, if that's also nothing like its book. There's a bit in that where Bond gets electrodes tied to his genitals and gets electric shocks put through them. The start of the film, you will be surprised here. So those novelizations definitely go for a sort of more intense version of Bond, which is a surprise. The guy who wrote them and wrote the screenplay of this film also wrote all those 70s British sex comedies, the Confessions of a Window Cleaner films. So he's basically from a broad palette.
I'm
But
sure.
I suppose the film Moonraker is more like Confessions of a Window Cleaner than the novel is.
I'm sure Bond has had electrodes attached to his genitals on a Saturday night of his own choosing. So
No, I was about to say, like, do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to come. That's a different Bond film.
That's Confessions of a 007.
The scene with the G-force testing thing. I'd imagine at the time this film came out, most people hadn't seen one of those. That one probably was a cool new space thing you were learning about.
I wonder if some of the 60s, people knew what the
Like
Mercury
NASA
accident
nerds
was.
would have known about it, yeah, but I bet it wasn't like as. I'm pretty well. Maybe I'm doing the thing of because I'm a space nerd, I'm assuming everyone else does. I feel like most people know what those things are now.
Mm.
I mean, it's kind of shameless that bit because it's like a much scaled up rip-off, a bit from Thunderball, where he goes on a traction table and somebody, a villain comes in and turns it up and he goes, whoa, as he's being stretched. And the woman comes and gets him and she's like, oh my, it must have been a terrible accident, Mr. Bond. I'm so sorry. It's just virtually exactly the same scene, but on a much bigger device. We're like, yeah, we got some money here. We don't need no traction table anymore. We're going to spin him round.
Well, I wonder if they just visited a place where they had one of them.
It's like this whole movie is like, things from past Bond films jacked up to 11, right?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's you say it's a bit self-indulgent and maybe playing it a bit safe, but which just happens to these Bond films every so often. Like you say, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and more self-indulgent. They do need to par down a bit. Often they go a bit too far with paring it down. I mean, especially when you get to License to Kill, which is just a die-hard film. They were like, no, people don't want further Bond films anymore. And of course, that same year, you had Last Crusade with James Bond in it. That's a fun romp. And you had the Batman movie about the guy with the cool car and all the gadgets. And poor License to Kill got trumped by films were a lot more like a Bond movie. But this is definitely a very indulgent movie.
Well, while we've got you here, Stuart, me and Matt did a podcast for No Time to Die. And at the end, we asked, so what do they do next? So what do you think they do next for Bond?
I think it'll be another reboot. I think Daniel Craig will be his own contained era. It'll be a new Bond. They might go mad and go for a black Bond or an unwhite Bond anyway. But it'll be broadly the same character. They're not going to do Jane Bond or anything like that. It is one of those characters who is defined by their gender. But as long as they keep this in the present day, it doesn't matter really what colour they are, as long as they're British. If they were to go down the route to do the 50s retro Bond, which lots of fans want, but I don't think they'll ever actually do, then it would have to be a white guy. But I wouldn't be totally rule out Tom Hardy at this point, because even though he is getting too old, when I talk to people, they don't care. They want some Tom Hardy. They would watch him do whatever the fuck he likes for 2 hours, and that might be enough to coast him through for a couple of films. I think he'd be a very much populist choice. I mean, I was talking to some people the other week, and I mentioned, Tom Hardy's in a Star Trek film. And they were like, I'm going to go watch that Star Trek film now. I was like, it's a shit Star Trek film now. They're like, I don't care. I will watch Tom Hardy eat shit for 2 hours.
Yeah, but did you tell them that he's not buff yet? Did that put them off?
No, I showed them the photos. They were like, oh, he's like young and he's skin tight PVC. It's a different sort of Tom Hardy.
I was
because me and Matt, when we were talking about it, we kind of do want to see him do just like Cold War Bond.
That's the world that needs a Bond, right?
Yeah. Because if we keep just going in modern times, then the idea of Bond is just entirely more and more ridiculous. Give me a Bond where he's just a sweaty nerd who sits at his computer and looks at like Russian bots.
How about we put in we throw a zinger at everyone? It's set in the 70s, not the 60s, and is set entirely inside of Jamaica for every movie. That'd be cool.
If you change a decade every film, you basically have those prequel X-Men movies where it's a different, none of them age over 30 years.
Even though there's a character who, a big part of his character is that he goes bald. Instead of using that to show him aging over the decades, he uses all of his hair at once in a sci-fi incident in the third one.
It would have been so easy. They have wigs and applications and stuff.
Exactly.
My boy just couldn't be bothered. That's all. He was like, no, I just throw some powder on my face. I'm doing this. And then, oh crap, he still has all his hair. We need to do this fast.
I mean, if I went back to the books for sort of 50 set stuff, I think some of the problems would be a lot of the best books were turned into films fairly close to when they were set. So you wouldn't make a better film of Goldfinger just by setting it 5 years earlier from when the film was set. Or Doctor No 3 years earlier when the film was set. So you basically have to do a film of Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me before you're out of. I mean, the last film had lots of set pieces from books they hadn't used yet, so you couldn't do a faithful version of Who Only Lived Twice now, so just done that with No Time to Die, all the bits from it. So that would be a tough thing, because you'd be treading a lot of ground they already did at the time the books set.
The reason I want to see them go back to slightly period piece is just because all of the elements of Bond that are problematic, they can just lean into. They just be like, yeah, he is a bit sexist and racist. Let's explore that. Let's have a Bond who maybe you're not necessarily supposed to identify with, and actually set it in the time that's appropriate.
The interesting thing with books is that because you get Bonds in a monologue, there's a lot of thoughts and conversations about how Britain is past it in the books. And it's all about, especially related as they go on, it's like he's obsessed with the idea that the NHS is a bad idea. And it's destroying the will of the British people and making them all lazy. That comes up a few times.
Brilliant.
The welfare state, and giving away the colonies. And we fought so hard about war, and we're still not rationing. We're still living in our own shit, and now all our old allies are laughing at us. And we've got Nazis trying to drop nuclear bombs on us, and it's you can tell that Ian Fleming was an increasingly bitter man as the books went on, as he aged, but the character of Bond stays the same age. He's like a 30-year-old with political opinions of a 55-year-old. He was like, oh, I wish we could still say nigger. That's just like too much for this podcast. Sorry,
you might have to beep that one.
That's why there's language content warnings or something.
Yeah.
Because that one does crop up a few times in there. I think mainly from Felix, actually, when he goes to America, that word crops up, which is ironic considering how he's been played in Daniel Craig films.
I was thinking since they did the books properly in the 60s to a certain extent, they could just like make the next set of Bond films like remakes of the Mission Impossible films and really confuse people.
That's what we think, because Spectre and the Mission Impossible film that came out that same year, which I can't remember the name of, they are basically exactly the same film anyway. We've got near enough the same plot about I can't even remember what the bloody plot's about now, but surveillance and all that. So yeah, it's like Star Wars in '79. They're just all leading into the same ideas.
Well, it's 33 years later. How's this one holding up? I feel like we're on the page that its reputation is improved because people accept it for what it is now. Yeah.
It's 43 years later.
It's too early in the morning.
God, don't you wish it was only 2012 again?
That's when the world ended.
This seems like one of those films that holds up better now than when it came out, because you can just accept it for what it is now, and what it is a really funny film.
So would you say it's the funniest of the Bond films?
It might be.
Yeah.
I was genuinely laughing along with it last night. It's great.
Along with it or at it?
Along with it. It's clearly meant to be, right? Like most of what I was laughing at was a deliberate joke.
Yeah.
For a little test of what people think now, a couple of weeks ago, I watched this for this podcast, but with a group of friends, most of whom had not seen it before. And they had a great time. They loved it. They loved the Hover Gondola. They loved Build Engine. They had some problems with sexism with a woman and some of the more casual racism, like the Asian assassin who dresses up like a samurai for no reason.
Well, he's just wearing a kendo set, which is designed to be non-lethal. It's a sporting attire.
Everyone's going, ah! And weirdly, Drax doesn't know that guy's name because he calls him Char, I think. While according to the end credits, his name is Chang. So imagine that level of having a bad boss.
Which also is a Chinese name, and he's clearly in Japanese kendo gear. So,
but the whole smashing a glass bit in Venice, they were really surprised by it turning into a space laser fight at the end. None of them were quite expecting that.
Oh,
but
God, yeah. The Venice bit was so funny, where he like chooses not to throw the thing that is valuable, and then he gets smashed anyway. That was great. That's a great gag. It's a genuinely hilarious film. Although, yeah, seeing Bond turn up in Venice, I expect heartbreak now.
Yeah, there's a YouTuber called Calvin Dyson, who's sort of like one of the main YouTube Bond reviewers on YouTube. So considering the caliber of other people who've had on this podcast, he's probably the guy you would have wanted for this if you'd have heard of him. But I wasn't going to say. But he did quite a funny edit of the end of Casino Royale, where Bond's running about looking for Vesper to go kill her, and he put the double taking pigeon in as he was running about.
Oh, the double taking pigeon. Yeah, amazing.
Which is apparently a very difficult shot to do, because he needed a pigeon to do at least a single take before you could reverse the film for the gag. That's hard to get a pigeon to do that. But yeah, and I like Roger in this. I know he's on the cusp of being too old for it, but he's not as old as he was getting. When he's in his black gear, he looks cool, and he maybe not so much when he is in the thing with spinning round and round. You see his wrinkles from doing that. When he's got the hairdryer in his face. But,
I imagine he's watching that scene thinking like, "Ooh, maybe I should get it pinned back. That looks good."
And he did, infamously, of course, because he looks very hard in A View to a Kill. But I think he's pretty cool in this, and he's got the right attitude. He's a better actor than people say. The next one, where it's more serious, lets him do some actual acting. Yeah. But he's got right mood and tone for this film, and he's the only Bond who could have done it as well. Yeah, you could have put Sean Connery in this. You could have imagined Timothy Dalton in this. That would have been a whole different movie.
Pierce Brosnan had some similar energy. He could have made it to the moon and back.
Brosnan makes an attempt at mooring a bit more, yeah.
He has his inner Moore. The irony is with Daniel Craig's favourite Bond is Roger Moore. Because you see interviews with all the others, they're always going, "Oh, I wish it could be more serious and more dramatic, and had some chance to do some more real acting." And when you see Daniel Craig, he's going, "Oh, I love it when Roger Moore went up to space and shot loads of lasers at people. I'd love to do some of that."
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, I guess Roger Moore's age in here is actually like kind of like one of the better jokes when you get down to it.
I think at this point he's younger than Daniel Craig was in the last one. Though he would soon be quite a bit older.
I think I got this from you, Stuart, but it's funny that Daniel Craig's second film, they're already doing... Well, the first film is his origin, and the second film is, are you too old to be Bond?
They had these massive gaps. I mean, the gaps between Spectre and No Time to Die is only 1 year less than the entire Pierce Brosnan era. The gap between two of his films, which we've lost 2 Daniel Craig films along the way, unfortunately. But when he's doing 3-hour movies, I guess he's probably going to have about the same screen time as Roger Moore.
In terms of like years as officially the Bond, is Craig the longest?
He is, if you don't count Never Say Never Again, which...
All right, because, Connery went away and came back.
Yeah, which officially it's not. It's never, ever going to be counted as part of any sort of Bond. Even though they own rights to it now, so MGM swapped their rights to Spider-Man, for Sony's rights to Thunderball as a sort of prisoner exchange. So they own Thunderball and Never Say Never Again fully now. But when Sean Connery died, they were like, "Oh, Sean Connery, who played Bond 6 times, not 7." Was like the official tweet. So it's
it's out the rock.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Oh well, as an officially approved Bond, Daniel Craig is the longest serving one.
I see.
But
maybe he'll come back and do one in 10 years unofficially, just to really fuck with everyone.
But that's also to be about his little. I mean, to maybe actually have Judi Dench in one after she died. So yeah, maybe we'll bring it back as a video message for the new clone Bond.
Well, they'll just leave it long enough that everyone's forgotten how, like, because in that film there's no doubt he's dead. But if they wait 10 years before doing a sequel, they can say like, "Oh no, he slipped into a bunker. You just missed it."
The irony is, it's based on the end of a book of You Only Live Twice.
Right.
Where at the end of that, he's in this pitch battle with Blofeld on this Japanese island in a garden of death, and it all explodes, and everybody thinks he's dead, but he's not. He's just got amnesia and been rescued by his Japanese fisher girlfriend who has him on her island till the next book as a sort of cliffhanger ending. So right up until it's actually exploded in his face, I thought, are we going to do the end? Is he going to survive? Oh no! Oh, he's not. No, he's not surviving that. There's no ambiguity like there is in the book.
Although considering some of the shit Daniel Craig's Bond survived, I wouldn't be surprised if we just get him brushing the dust off like A-Team style.
But see, the blast propulsed him into like a mountain of cotton candy.
Oh, you see, the Phoenix Force put him in a cocoon state.
Jaws jumps in and covers him with his body, and his own indestructibility saves them both.
Actually, Jaws in this film, he gets a bit of the G.I. movie rescue at the end there, because he's on the space station that's collapsing to Earth. They're like, "Oh, there were 2 survivors, a tall man and a short woman." Like, yeah, in the G.I. Joe movie, because everyone hated that Optimus Prime die in the Transformers movie, they put a line at the end where he's like, "I just got a call. Duke's fine." He's come out of his coma.
If you want more Jaws, I recommend watching from the Oscar ceremonies in 1982 when they do the For Your Eyes Only performance, because that was amazing. It was an Oscar-nominated song. You have Jaws and Oddjob from Goldfinger dancing about on stage. They were their original actors.
He's done a bunch of cameo appearances since in like various other films. And apparently he's a major character in James Bond Jr.
Sadly not played. Richard Keel's not going to the studio and do silence.
Yeah, maybe he did. We don't know.
Oh, yeah, he's right over there. He's just in the corner. It's cool. He's officially endorsing it with his time, but we're not paying him because he's not doing anything.
I named some Richard Keel trivia, but he was the original Incredible Hulk before they decided he wasn't good enough and got the other bloke to replace him. So if you watch some shots of a Incredible Hulk pilot, some of that is Jaws.
Okay.
With a shot from behind, so they didn't reshoot all of it.
Huh.
And we'll be encountering him again soon in the Twilight Zone because he's the alien that likes to eat humans.
Oh, cool.
He loves man meat.
Yeah.
Man flesh.
I guess we'll kind of close the book on this one for today, unless someone has a moony thought of the moon, thoughts about the moon that they want to share.
They don't actually land on the moon in this, do they?
No, it's just the name of the space shuttle, man.
Yeah, I'd assumed it would end with a moon base, but it's not. It's just a space station.
That's where you're crossing your wires with Austin Powers, because I think they do go to the moon, that one.
Yeah. Space shuttles can't go to the moon. This film is science fact, so they couldn't
There you go. Yeah.
To the moon.
More fool me.
I'll give you one final bit of interesting production trivia, or not. But when they're blowing up the space station at the end, because you don't have explosions in the vacuum of space, because remember, science facts, that was achieved by hanging the model upside down from the ceiling and shooting it with shotguns.
Nice.
And in the James Bond universe, they'll never be able to put anything into space ever again. With all of
Well, with
the
all those
space
death
prep
satellites, that's probably a good thing.
We've imprisoned ourselves on the Earth now. Yeah. Well, Stuart, I guess tell them where you're at if people want to find what you're up to on the internet, things like that.
Yeah, well, I'm active Facebook Dalek on Twitter, and most of the places that you might want to look, apart from anything that's cool like TikTok, I'm not on that. But Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well, active Facebook Dalek, where my main thing is now revisitation, websites where every week I look at a different issue of the IDW Transformers comics in publication order from over the last nearly 20 years of their history. So it's looking at them with their original context, reviewing them, the ongoing stories and behind the scenes information. It's nearly as interesting as my shooting a model with a shotgun anecdote there. And sort of all sorts of behind the scenes stuff like that. And some swear words, probably. I think I said cunt in the last piece. But not quite as bad as what would have had to be bleeped out on this podcast. I was only using this as song context. So won't you see that one on there? Is
that the name of the Transformer?
Oh, but there are some contentious names of Transformers. Yes, that's a whole other podcast. But yeah, you can see me do that. And you can also buy
Can't transform and roll out.
You can also buy books of my previous website, Project Transformation, where I did exactly the same thing, but for the Marvel Transformers comic, which are on Amazon and other online retailers. And another one of those should hopefully be coming out this year because it's a few years late. But buy the first two now, and you can be cool before the third one comes out.
I've read the first two. I think my second one is signed.
Yes, in person.
Yeah, I met you just before I left for Japan for that one.
You were like, I've got my signed book, now I must leave.
Yeah.
This country forever.
Well, it's going to become rare soon when Britain is destroyed. So
yes, I mean, I'm talking about what I'm doing, but yeah, the way things are, this could be the last thing of mine that ever goes out. So if you're hearing this from beyond the grave, I think my life has a message. That message is be like Roger Moore. To all take that home with you, whether your homes are still standing or not.
Yeah, I've been trying to squeeze in a lot of UK guests before the end of British summertime, but also just before the end of Britain.
Okay, Fizz, how long does it take for these to come out? A couple of weeks, is it?
Well, we've actually got quite a backlog at the minute, so it will be a few weeks, yeah.
A few weeks. So imagine the people listen to this in a month or so will be like, oh, they sound so naive. But only they knew what actually happened next. Because the way this year's gone so far, they're laughing at us again. Oh, they thought a nuclear war would be the terrible thing.
They were still able to laugh. That's amazing.
Listen to their pessimism. This was before Boris fixed everything.
I mean, I'm just impressed with the president of Ukraine, who is now our great big hope for the future, is a TV celebrity, reality star to politician, like Trump was. Only we all like this one. It's like it's worked this time, the process of, he wouldn't strictly come dancing, we'll make him president.
Yeah, he actually seems pretty sound.
It's Trump and Johnson, they had to fall so he could fly. It was great experiments of putting people on television and then making them in charge.
I wish Johnson would fall from a great height and there was not a circus beneath him to catch him.
It should be. Everyone deserves a circus, probably. I mean, you're probably going to die if you hit the circus. It's just going to be a spectacle for the circus, right?
I mean, he is a clown, so he probably should land in a circus. Yeah.
Luke, I guess tell them where we're at.
You can find this podcast on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where podcasts can be found. Make sure you find us, give us a like and a 5-star rating and a review and a whatever else. And if you want to help keep this podcast online, support us, pay the bills, and hopefully hear episodes a little bit early, you can go to patreon.com/podcastios.
And if you came to this podcast because of me, and I can't see why you would have, I'd say they have some really good guests, big names that you would not expect two expats living in Japan to get hold of. They got the
send out enough messages, people say yes. Yeah. It's crazy.
They got the son of Gene Roddenberry to come on and talk about the Star Trek film that is an extensive piss take of Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah,
that was the impressive thing. And he didn't get into rise the boats on that.
He did talk a bit about like how it relates to people like remembering his father and stuff. I think that was actually a really interesting chat we had.
Yeah,
we also had
Chong.
We've had Chong on the podcast of Cheech and Chong.
I think he must have thought we were someone else, or he was just really high.
What film did you have him on for?
I mean, we barely talked about films, but we just talked about his first film. It's got a car made of weed. That's sci-fi.
So there you can hear Cheech from Cheech and Chong. I don't know who that is, but I'm sure that one is impressive. And you could hear Eugene Roddenberry and all sorts of other people.
But they all pale in comparison to Stuart Webb.
That is the correct response.
Which will change the name to the webcast. And never do a Spider-Man movie again, because that'll be extra confusing. I remember. I was going to say all of my books are signed by me. That would be hip.
Maybe I'll start doing that, just signing all my own books. Confuse people as I sell them.
To myself with frank admiration.
To Luke, keep on trucking from Luke.
You're going to do that, aren't you?
Possibly. I'm going to do it to all the books Rob lends me from now on. All right, I'm going to go and attempt re-entry. So laters.
Ooh la la. Oh, that was not the right button.